Are you preparing for a Massachusetts divorce or custody hearing? Well, here's 10 tips to help you. I'm Heather O'Connor from O'Connor Family Law. If you have your first court hearing coming up, chances are the nerves are high. These tips will help you get ready and put your best foot forward. Tip 1, make sure service has been completed properly. If it's your motion and you don't have the proper proof of service, the court will not let your motion move forward. Bring an extra copy with you if you don't have an attorney. Tip 2, get educated on what the purpose of the hearing is. There are many different types of hearings. There's motion hearings, contempt hearings, evidentiary hearings, status hearings, pretrial hearings, and many others. Each type is going to have a different process and will require a different type of argument. Tip 3, do not drink or do any sort of drugs unless they're prescribed to you, especially the night before your hearing, and especially if there are allegations of abusing alcohol or drugs. And this includes the person who is actually making the allegations. If the judge sends one person for a drug or alcohol test, they usually send both people, so be prepared. Tip 4, figure out where you need to park before the morning of your hearing and make sure you get there in enough time just in case the lots are already full. I've gone to court before and had to drive around for 10 to 15 minutes because everywhere I normally park was packed. So make sure you leave enough time to allot for this without increasing your anxiety, because even though you're already anxious, now you're probably more so because you're late too. Tip 5, check ahead of time with the court to see if they allow phones or other electronics into the building. Prior to COVID, a lot of courts restricted this. And if you brought in a phone with you, you'd have to go back and leave it in your car and then come back and go through security all over again, making you late. Tip 6, know whether you need to check in with probation. Probation in family court is not like in criminal court, and it can also be referred to as family services. It's a service that's often mandatory prior to being able to appear before the judge on a motion hearing if both parties are not represented by an attorney, and in some courts, even when they are represented by an attorney. And it's where you and your attorney, or sometimes everyone, sits down with the probation or family service officer to discuss the contested issues and try to reach a settlement on them. There's two things to note with this. One, it's important to note that the name temporary orders can sometimes trick people into thinking that they're not that big of a deal because they're temporary. Don't make that mistake. Temporary orders have a habit of becoming permanent orders if the two parties aren't able to agree on something else. And the second is that it's also important to know that there can be quite a bit of pressure put on you to settle during this probation meeting. It's so important to understand the strengths and the weaknesses of your case. If you believe in your position and cannot settle at what is being requested, then don't. You have the right to go before the judge, but you need to know your chances before you get there. Please realize that just because you believe in your position, the judge might not see it the same way you do, and you could end up with an even worse outcome for you than what was being offered. Tip 7, dress respectfully when you go to court. Although appearances are not everything, how you dress and care for yourself does make a first impression on the judge, who is a human being, as soon as you walk up to that table. I tell our clients to dress like you're going to a funeral because most people still dress nice for that. But if you do choose jeans and a t-shirt, be aware of the message your t-shirt is sending. I've seen people being accused of abusing drugs with their request for supervised visitation show up to court wearing clothes with drug paraphernalia on them. That obviously doesn't help you. I've also seen people show up in clothes that, in a club, would look great, but in a courtroom fighting for your children, it does not send the right message. You don't need to spend a ton of money on a fancy suit or dress clothes, but do try to find the most conservative outfit you have and go with that. Tip 8, if you do enter into a stipulation or a judgment, Please, please, please make sure you completely understand the language that it's written on the paper. If it's not written clearly or has left room for interpretation, that's just going to lead to further conflict. Make sure there are details in there about parenting time and finances that you're able to fall back on if you and your ex have disagreements moving forward. Things like specific time and days for pickups and drop-offs. Who's supposed to be doing the transportation? What happens on a snow day or a sick day? Something about that bills need to be paid timely. Things like that. Tip number 9. If it's a hearing where the judge is going to enter an order, unless you agree or it's an emergency issue that you're in on, you usually will not know the outcome leaving court that day. The judge will say that they're taking the matter under advisement at the end of your hearing. This means that they will write and send out an order based on the arguments and the pleadings later. That order usually gets sent out in the mail and can take anywhere from a week to a month and unfortunately sometimes even longer. Tip number 10, our last tip. Leave the entire day open when you have a court hearing. Court is extremely unpredictable, and we've been in court for things that we think should take less than an hour, but we end up stuck there all day long. Court in Massachusetts typically ends around 4:30. So if you have kids, make sure you arrange for childcare until after that time. It's better to not need it than be stressing at court because the hearing's running longer than you expected and you don't know who is going to watch your kids. Also, being in court, even if you have an attorney arguing on your behalf, is incredibly stressful. You will likely have very mixed emotions when you leave the courthouse. Feelings of sadness, anger, resentment, loneliness, fear, excitement, hope, and probably even some confusion among a number of others. It could even be a situation where you experience all of them within a short period of time. And that is exhausting. Take the night off where you can just relax and get your head on straight. That's ideal. However, for some people, getting busy and keeping their mind off things might actually help them feel less anxious. There's no right answer, and you know you. So just make sure you're doing what you need to stay healthy after a long day. Again, I'm Heather O'Connor from O'Connor Family Law, and those were 10 tips that I hope you find very helpful. Please like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a video. Have a great day.